It's after Labor Day, and that means it's the unofficial end to summer. Hi, I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings, and today we're going to take a walk through the Northern Michigan garden and talk about plants that did well throughout the summer, annuals that are still going strong, as well as perennials and shrubs that are giving us great interest that will lead us into the fall. So let's go ahead and take a walk through the gardens. We're going to start this tour off in kind of a newly planted garden that Rod did probably only about 2 months ago or so. This side of the house was reconstructed and replanted, and the plants that he planted are doing very well. This is a fairly shady area. It gets a little bit of morning sun like we're seeing now, but the plants that were selected for this area are Bernera, Heuchera. There's also some Pulmonaria. And then we did do, and they're in the back there, some of the Rosa Sharon hibiscus. So they're pretty small right now, but the Rosa Sharon do fairly well with the amount of sun that they're getting. We ripped one out of this area and it was blooming pretty profusely. That's a great hummingbird plant as well. And also when planting up this area, we had to be pretty conscious of the deer as well. So we tried to keep in mind plants that would do well even if the deer came and started to browse. Now that being said, I know one of you are going to spy that hosta there and are going to say, Heidi, you're crazy. The deer are going to eat that alive, and they may, but so far so good. That's the Miss America hosta, so we'll see how it does. I don't have high hopes, but it's pretty nonetheless, and we'll see how it goes, even if we have to put a little bit of Bob-X to keep it going strong. The container we moved from the front of the house to the back here, and it did not do so good. It's definitely not getting enough sun. The palm tree is doing pretty well, but all of our Calibrachoa just aren't blooming. We've got some sweet potato vine that's not doing great. Also we have a little bit of salvia, just not getting enough sun in this area. So next year we will have to intentionally plant for this area, knowing that we have to keep in mind we need to keep shade plants in this container, which is fine. We didn't know it was going to go here, so it is what it is, and it's perfectly fine. As we head down and look into the tiered garden beds, we'll see how the lighting goes. I might have to do these from bottom up. I think we'll be okay. So in this tiered garden bed, Rod planted some mahogany monster corabels along with some Hacklina grass, and that is doing beautiful. I really love that little strip here in the garden. It's looking great. The next level down, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. This is about a 5-foot drop down. This is just a nice little garden space that Rod was very intentional with planting deer-resistant plants in. So we're seeing some Bernera in there, Pulmonaria, corabels. There's also some Jacob's Ladder. There's Ligularia. What else do we have in there? A few of the Campanula clips, those did not do good for us, and that wasn't because of the deer. It's just that they rotted out and didn't do good in the space. So even us, not everything does good with what we're thinking it's going to do. Not a lot of color right now, so I anticipate next spring we're going to get a lot more color, but right now it's just a little bit of foliage color. Also along the edge of this bed, poppies were planted, and they're starting to kind of phase out for the summer, kind of going dormant. So those probably next summer, will be a nice little border there of poppy blooms. We'll head down to those lower gardens in just a moment and talk about those when I get down to the bottom, but that'll give you just a little tease as to what's coming up more towards the end of the video. Up here at the front of the house, you can see that the Hacklina all gold grass has done phenomenal, and that goldy, I call it gold, but it's more of a chartreuse yellow color. It's just brilliant. I just love the vibrancy of that plant, and that has done good from when it woke up this spring here, well, now through Labor Day, and it's going strong. Also in the back up against the house there, we have some of the sun patience. Those are the white sun patience, and they've done fabulous all summer long. Like, so easy to take care of, hardly any fertilizer needed, and they just really put on a show. There's a few hosta in there that are still looking decent. Fall color, if you're looking to add some fall color to your garden, obviously that Hacklina is giving great fall color. But we also have a few anemone in here. And these were planted, I think, last year, so not super huge plants yet. but great fall color there. The pink for the anemone. This is Fall in Love Sweetly. Behind it, you're seeing a little bit of color. That is Tuscan Gold, and that was a long blooming perennial, and it's still going strong here into the fall. Let's take a look here at the planters that we did. So the annual planters, I don't know, I was not impressed with them this year at all. Well, we're going to have to do something different next year. I do like the palm tree here in the center as the Thriller. It did okay here. It gets enough shade that the fronds aren't burning up. So this palm tree in this location is doing fine. We had some Calebercoa or Super Bells in here, along with there is some Angelonia. There's also that wire vine. What else did we put in here? I think we have a couple different Super Bells. But really the only thing that's showing much color right now is a little bit there from that Angelonia. Couple Super Bells poking color, but not a whole lot. So I'm going to have to revisit that and try to think about maybe what I can do for, again, more of a shadier place. This is east facing, so it gets sun until approximately noon or so. So I got to think of something more colorful, come up with a new design for next year. And then as we cross over, this one here gets a little bit more sun, and you can see there's a little bit more of the Super Bell showing. Not much, a little bit though. And then again, the Angelonia is doing very well here on this one because this one is getting more sun. And then this side gets the most sun. You can see there's the most Super Bells showing up there. So I just have to be more intentional about what I put in based off of how much sun the plants are actually going to be getting. In this little front garden space, things that are doing well, annuals, more of the Sun Patience. The Sun Patience just really, I think, are one of those annuals that you can't go wrong with. Just they need a lot of water, so I'm going to put that up front, but they don't need a lot of fertilizer, and they just really do fabulous. The Lemon Coral Sedum, which is that bright yellow mounding sedum, that's an annual sedum. That's done fabulous all summer long. We do have, over here is a few more Angelonia. This is the Wedgwood Blue. Those are doing pretty good. As far as fall color, we have the Firelight Tidbit here right up in front. They're just kind of starting to take on a little bit of their pink coloration. And then also you're seeing some more anemone there. The Fall in Love Sweetly, the nice pink blooms. And they're just a little bit taller than that Firelight Tidbit. So that would be color that you could add into the garden if you're looking to add some fall color in. Here's another plant that's it's a surprise, not a surprise, but it's an opening act phlox. This was trimmed back and has blessed the garden with more blooms. So with your opening act phlox, if you have them, go ahead and give them a light trim and they'll be blooming again, shortly. I believe this variety is the Ultra Pink, and it's doing fabulous. Also in the back there, let's see if I can zoom in, we've got lavender. There's a few little blooms going on the lavender. Rod planted those about 2 months ago, so they haven't been in the garden very long, but I'm really surprised that lavender is still blooming in this space as well. We've got coneflowers, and I know there's somebody that always asks me when I skip over this, oh, you didn't show the coneflower garden. This is just a patch of coneflowers, and they are pretty much spent and done for the season. But what we're going to do is I'm going to leave those flowers on because even though they're starting to fade and kind of turn brown a little bit, the seeds are something that the birds like. And I don't know if you noticed the bird feeders earlier in the video. We do love to have the birds come into the garden. So we'll just leave these on for as long as we can. That way the birds can enjoy the seeds from the cones and the cone flowers. All right, we're going to go head on up to the front garden and check out how that's doing. So if you're looking for fall interest, ornamental grasses are a must, like in my opinion anyways. They add motion to the garden, they add structure, they add height, and I think they just, I don't know, the character they bring is, I don't know, it's something you really can't get from perennials. This one here, it's got kind of it's a zebra grass. You can see the little splotches on it, and that gives it kind of cool interest just on the foliage. And then these later on in the season will send up flower plumes, but right now we're just enjoying the beautiful foliage. The sun pations have done fabulous in this spot as well. Now these don't get as much sun as some of the other places, but look at them. They're gorgeous. And very little care and maintenance was put into these sun pations, with the exception, like I said before, of keeping them watered. They do like their water. Another plant that's nice for fall interest, and really interest all summer long because of the beautiful chartreuse splash of color, is the Aralia Sun King. A beautiful chartreuse plant, gets about 3 foot tall, 3 foot wide when it's mature, but just really a vibrant splash of color. Here's a few more ornamental grasses mixed in. As we cross over the driveway, let's take a look at the front garden here. So this is the garden that people drive past when they're on the road, and there's a lot of grass in here. And the grass gives, again, structure to this garden. It also creates just a little bit of privacy. You can see as we're standing here at the road, it kind of covers up the cottage so that you're not totally seeing it from the road. In the fall, the plumes will emerge, so even a little bit later here in the fall, we'll have the plumes. And I love having these ornamental grasses. And with the deer problem that can be in this area, they leave ornamental grasses alone. So it's a pretty safe plant to put in the garden without needing to worry about the deer. So in this area here, if you watched any of our earlier videos earlier in the season, we had beautiful Nemesia, the Aromance mulberry, and that plant did do fabulous all summer. It's starting to kind of slow down a little bit now, and this is what I would expect for it to do. I think Rod also came through and trimmed it a little bit because it was starting to slow down, so he was hoping to get another cycle of flowers. But I think it's just a little bit too late in the season here for us to get a really good show on that plant. I forgot to mention earlier, we are a Zone 5B, and we are in, we call it northern Michigan because it's north of where we live, but we're probably about 3/4 of the way up the lower peninsula of Michigan. In this garden, you can see the sedum lemon coral is still doing really well. The little chartreuse mounds, also the lobularia, the white, they're still putting on a little bit of a flower show there. The Cleome senorita is flowering still pretty nice for this late in the season. There's a few more of the lobularia, the violet night. And I think it's either snow princess or white night. Again, sun pations doing fabulous. Tropical rose, I believe, is the variety there. And wow, this is kind of a surprise. These are the beacon impatiens, and why I say that's a surprise is because they really have not done much all summer long. I don't know if the deer were eating them or what, but they're really showing now, and I think they look really nice, that color. Now we're going to get cold, and those are going to be one of the first things to get zapped. But wow, I guess I really haven't noticed them putting on much color this year. Another thing that's doing well is the begonias. This is the Surefire Cherry Cordial Begonia. The deer have left these alone, and they've added a good amount of color into this garden bed, not only with the flower color, that bright red, but also the nice deep dark foliage. And I think that contrasts really nicely up against the greens here of the grasses. As we cross over, we're kind of going to get a little bit of a repeat because symmetry is kind of a thing here for us. We like to have symmetrical looks, but again, it's just giving you other specimens to see, and you can see that they are equally doing well. Again, that Senorita Rosalita Cleome, more of the sun patiens, more of the beacon impatiens, lobularia. And I'm wondering, this side seems just a little bit nicer than the other side. I wonder if this might get sun earlier in the day, and that's why some of these sun-loving plants are just doing just a little bit better. Some more Cleome and lobularia. On the back side of the bed, when we bought this place, the grasses came in the garden, so that's why they're very established, but also there was a lot of Coreopsis. Now, Coreopsis, I don't love Coreopsis, but it's a great plant. Why I don't love it, I can't give you a good answer, but when it's blooming, it's gorgeous. So you can see the remnants here of the little yellow flowers. This is a plant deer don't eat. So this you'll find a lot here in deer country. It spreads a lot. So maybe that's the reason I don't love it, because it just kind of takes over a little bit. And you're definitely seeing that here in this garden. But when it was in full bloom, it was really very pretty. A garden mum, so this is great fall color. Pop a few mums into your garden. Where we're at, they sometimes overwinter, they sometimes don't. This particular one did overwinter and is looking really nice. So if you can get them to overwinter where you're at, usually it's a pretty nice fall plant that just blooms naturally. If they don't overwinter where you're at, mums are very plentiful, and just poke them in your garden. And that way you get that little splash of fall color. See, there's more of that Coreopsis just really taking over. We need to try to maybe do a little bit more on the back side of this garden to give it some color with the, in addition to that Coreopsis and the grass that we're seeing. And maybe Rod did. It's just that it's so late in the season that the grasses have gotten so big and maybe have even covered up anything that he had planted on this side of the garden. Because from the cottage looking out this way, there's not a lot to look at with the exception of the ornamental grasses. As we make our way down to the front gardens, there's a couple plants I really haven't talked about much this year, and that's as we're walking down the hill. And I don't know why I've skipped over them, I just have, I guess. But in this little garden bed here, this has got the Teleopsis Tuscan Sun, along with Allium Millennium, which is bloomed probably about a month and a half ago. And then we also have a few Pulmonaria and Corbels tucked in for earlier season color. I really love how the yellow bounces off the blue of the house, and yeah, I think that's really a vibrant thing. Okay, I'm having a squirrel moment here because we had our employees up here at the Northern Michigan Garden last week, and one of our employees paints rocks. I found one earlier, and she thought there might be another one, and oh my goodness, look what I just found. Is that not the most gorgeous painted rock you've ever seen? She has mad painting skills and does a fabulous job. So I'm sorry that that was kind of a squirrel moment, but wow, when you find something as pretty as that hiding in the garden, I think it's worth showing off. The next little bed here, we have some of the opening act phlox, which Rod has trimmed back, and it's just giving us a little bit of color now. And then also there's some caladiums he poked in here. We had some left over at the greenhouse. So he just poked some caladiums in for a splash of color as well. So for those of you who've watched the garden videos before, I've had this spot in our garden. It was right here where we're looking now. That was all dirt and just kind of a mess. And we kept saying, we're going to do something with that space. Not sure what. Well, over the holiday weekend and the weekend before, Rod and my son Carter built us a deck. So we were able to cover up all that unlevel dirt space with a deck, and I think they did a really nice job, and I think that's really going to add to this garden space. It overlooks the lake, but it also really nicely overlooks the gardens and such below. So now we can say the gardens are complete, and I think that was a wonderful addition to the garden space. So as long as we're talking gardens, let's look down onto this garden. So every garden in my yard is like 4 foot, 5 foot down because we're on a very, very steep hill. So there's constantly tiers and levels that we're planting into. So this particular garden here is doing great. I love it. So plants that we have in this garden, sun patiens, they line the front there. And those have done good all summer long, and now that it's, after Labor Day, they're doing really great as well. So they'll last until we get a good hard frost. Other colors that are going to take us through into fall are the Bobo hydrangeas, which are the white hydrangeas that we're looking at down onto right now. And then also you're seeing a lot of coneflower in this garden, and that, as long as the season continues, that coneflower is going to add color to this space as well. So a lot of fall color in this bed. Oh, also, I almost forgot to mention, we've got Pugster butterfly bush. Let's see, I'm going to try to get a different angle for you as well. That way you can see this from a different angle. But the Pugster butterfly bush, bright purple blooms, and super fragrant. So as we sit up here on the deck, the fragrance of those butterfly bush are just beautiful. So we'll go ahead and show you this from a different angle too, so you can see what it looks like from bottom up. This is a little planter box that we just created out of brick. And this we jam-packed full with bubblegum supertunias. We had jazzberry in here, and when they were working on the deck, they kind of got stepped on and didn't look good. So we had some bubblegum left at the greenhouse. So Rod went ahead and packed it full just to give some vibrant color. So I'm going to let you go ahead and put in the comments below your guess. How many bubblegum petunia do you think he planted in this space? We'll come back to it in a couple minutes with an answer. But right now, go ahead and tell me, how many bubblegum petunia did he pack into this space? The number is high, so think big. All right, so we're going to look bottom up on these tiered gardens here. And I'm going to try to walk in and get you a better view. This is a very narrow space to be walking, and very fall off the wall if I miss my step. So let me get up here and get closer for you. All right, so this is the garden bed we were looking at from top down earlier. And I'm just doing this because I want you to see the foliage and the texture of the plants that are in this bed. So a lot of foliage, a lot of texture. Foliage color, because right now there's not a lot of flower color, so we had to use other elements to bring some color into the space. This was only planted about 2 months ago, so next year is when it's going to really put on its show. All right, this little bed I'm in here now, I don't have a lot of space to work with, so I apologize for kind of the bad angles and such. But this little space here, there are astilbe, bleeding heart, more of the Jacob's ladder, some penstemon. We'll see how that does, if it gets enough sun or not. I'm not sure. We'll see. There's some ajuga on the very edge, out by that butterfly statue. We have a delphinium, so hopefully that will get some sun. That will bloom next year. I haven't really seen it bloom much this year. Oh, but look at here. Look what found its home on a delphinium. Any guesses as to what that is? That's a monarch butterfly chrysalis. So my daughter and I brought about 70 or so monarch caterpillars and butterflies up here and placed them in the garden. So it's kind of fun to find where all these little chrysalis are finding place to call home. And this here, I believe this is a helianthus. We bought this from another garden center, and I forgot to take a look at the tag. We don't grow them, so I apologize if I'm wrong. But this here has been blooming for 2 months or so and doing quite well. All right, some more sun patience in this garden and lining this little bed. Now these sun patience aren't doing as good. So what we're thinking is that they're not getting enough sun. That, or somehow deer are getting up into the space. Both are entirely possible, but I do honestly think, because I'm not really seeing like chew marks, I do think that these white sun patience just aren't getting enough sun in this space. The next level down here, again, just a small little space, but there is the Tuscan Gold Heliopsis in there. There's a couple of those. We'll see if there's enough sun for them. Also, there's some creeping phlox along the very front of the rock there, so that will be great spring color. There's some Bergina, probably Miss Piggy is a variety. There is the black you're seeing. That's Astilbe, dark side of the moon. And then tucked in the very corner here is Ligularia bottle rocket. So again, this year I haven't been able to show you a ton of color in these little spaces because they were recently planted. So I'm excited for next year when things are blooming and flowering, that I'll be able to show you a lot more color in these spaces. All right, let's go ahead and take a walk and check out some of those lower gardens. So here's a look from bottom up at the garden space that we're going to overlook from that new deck. And I think that that deck just really finishes off this garden space so nicely. And just standing here, these butterfly bushes are just so fragrant. This here is what I like to call my butterfly garden, and primarily the reason I'm calling it that is because it's chock full of Asclepias, which is milkweed for the monarch butterflies, And then we also have dill and fennel in here, and parsley, which is for the black swallowtails. In addition to those host plants for those butterflies, we have some beautiful roses and hydrangeas as well. This rose, I'm not even sure the name of it. It's something we picked up at a garden center and I thought was so pretty. We have the mini mauve hydrangeas, which are done flowering now. But even though they're done flowering, I still think that the spent blooms add a lot of interest and texture into this garden space. Really, there's not a lot of color in this garden space now that we're late in the season. But if you watch the earlier garden tours, they were just loaded with yellows, oranges, pinks. It was really a very beautiful space in the garden. Here we have our ajuga wall, and this was planted about 1 or 2 years ago. I kind of lost track of time at this point. But the reason why we planted ajuga along this hill bank is because, as you can see, it's a very steep bank, and we wanted to plant something that would hold the dirt in place. And ajuga is a perfect ground cover for that. Ajuga can be grown in full sun or full shade, so it fits this place very well. We mixed, I think we had 8 different varieties. We mixed them all together just to give a little different color and texture. Some were bigger leafed, some were smaller leafed, and then they do flower purple flowers in the spring. But yeah, it's definitely doing what it was supposed to do. We did plant them close together, but at this point we're not seeing really any dirt between the plants because they have just grown and filled in so nicely. So they are doing a good job of holding that dirt, which is what we really wanted for them. Now, ajuga is the right plant for the right place. This is not the right plant for every place because it is quite a spreading plant. You want to make sure that you're putting it into a place that you want it to spread. So hillsides are perfect, even planting beds. So like if you had a bed like this and you just wanted it to be solid plants, you could put ajuga in here as well. All right, so for those of you who have stuck with me this long, how many bubblegum petunias are in this space? The answer is 70. Rod planted them pot tight, jam-packed them into that little space because he wanted instant gratification. How many did it really take? If you were planting, you probably could get by with 7. But because we had leftovers and they were going to get dumped anyways, he just jammed them in there knowing it was end of season and he wanted that instant gratification. So there you go. 70 plants, not dumped, but put to good use. All right, so we've got 3 more garden spaces to go, and let's take a look at what we've got going on in here. So in this garden bed, again, very consistent theme going on with all of our beds is the sun patiens. They have just really done fabulous all summer long. Behind them is some salvia, unplugged blue, and that too is still going strong. So this little area, until we get a hard frost, or I shouldn't say a hard frost, until we get a good frost, these will continue to put on that color. And yeah, I've really been impressed with the sun patiens this year. And I said to Rod, we're going to be doing a lot more sun patiens in this garden next year. Other things that are still blooming, we've got some sedum coming into color for great fall color. So if you're looking for fall color, sedum is a great perennial to plant that will give you just that. There's another one there next to that ornamental grass. That's the desert plain grass. Other things that are blooming, we have the hardy hibiscus blooming. This is lilac crush. And this just started blooming, which is about a month behind any others that we have in any of our other gardens at home. And I think it's just because the temperature difference up here compared to down just a little bit south of here. Other things in this garden that are still putting on a show, coleus, they're still doing pretty well. Once we get cold though, we'll know it because coleus are one of those that are very sensitive to the cold. We do have some phlox that are blooming. That's the luminary white. Now in the earlier videos when we were talking about deer pressure and stuff, the phlox were getting eaten by the deer. So they were sprayed with Bob-X and now they are flowering again. They put on new growth and are now rewarding us with the flowers because of the spray we put on them to keep the deer away. So deer spray is a good thing if you need it, and don't think all is lost if they've eaten your plants. Once they stop munching, the plants usually will put on more growth and reward you then with more flowers. All right, we're going to walk the hill and get to that next level because it's just a little too high for me to climb. We're going to actually do these 2 levels together. We'll start with the middle level. So this level is where we actually first saw evidence of deer browsing, and the hostas are still showing signs. So that was our indicator plant that we had deer in the area. Also, the deer were eating on the daylilies. Now, daylilies aren't, unless they're reblooming, they usually aren't going to put on a lot of new flower growth. So we didn't see many blooms on the daylilies this year. We'll have to be more intentional about hitting those with the Bob-X next year earlier so that we get to enjoy the flowers. These phlox here also were hit hard with the deer eating on them. And once they were sprayed with Bob-X, you can see too that they have come back and are gorgeous. These are the ultraviolet, luminary ultraviolet phlox. Beautiful color. So I can't wait until they get more mature and less deer chewed so that they'll be a lot bigger in this garden. Another great fall color plant we talked about earlier, and here's just another position in the garden. You can see it, and this is the Fall in Love Sweetly anemone. Now this top level here, you can see there's a lot of hostas over there. They were munched on a little bit, but not terrible, which is surprising. There's some Brunnera in there. Even though that's a spring flowering plant, it's pretty good foliage for the fall. That's a lot of nice interest. So I'm going to back up out of this space. I can kind of show you the space like all in one shot. So it was interesting. Like I mentioned earlier, we had our employees up here to enjoy the lake and all the fun things to do around the area. And one of the employees said that she thought this was her favorite space in all of these little gardens that we have created. And I guess I never thought of it before, but you know, standing here looking at it after she mentioned that, I kind of agree with her. I love this little space. And what are the things in it that make it stand out? It's that Karl Forester grass in the background. Just giving those little pokes there, the height, the motion. In front of them are little lime punch hydrangeas. Now these are little guys. They were planted just a year ago, so this is not their mature size. They're going to get much taller as they mature, so they might even cover that grass at some point. But for now, it looks really nice. And then we've got the Let's Dance Can Do hydrangeas, which are past their prime. But even though the flowers are past their prime, they still look nice. And then for earlier season color, we have a few salvia in here. And then lining those front rocks, that's the dianthus, the Paint the Town dianthus, which is gorgeous, just a massive color earlier in the season. So this garden bed here does have a lot of great early season color, mid-season color, and then now going into the fall, late season color. So I guess, you know, sometimes it takes others to open your eyes and say, hey, this is a great space. And it helps you realize that maybe it was more than you ever even intended for a space. So that was one thing that I think was really neat when she pointed that out and said that to us. Hopefully today's video gave you some inspiration as to what you can plant if you're looking for some fall color in your garden, as well as knowing which annuals can take you from early season well into the fall in just little to no work and give you lots of reward for your investment. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. And if you're new to our station, we'd love it if you would subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings.